What'd they do?
Okay, so what's your name?
Oh, you want to know my name? My name is Zola Fogg Gross, and I live on a farm near Bushland, Texas, which in turn is about 15 miles from Amarillo, Texas, that is.
So, how old are you?
How old am I? I'll be 94 in October the 1st.
So,
Born in 1924.
what is the Dust Bowl?
Oh, well, the Dust Bowl was a dry area of the panhandle, much like this, only it was like it is these days, only it was more severe because we had little knowledge of things, and it was just an era of maybe 3 or 4 years where the winds would come in and pick up the loose dirt that no crops had been on it because there was no rain, the crops wouldn't grow. So it would pick the dust up and get it moving, and it would form rolls like a big bedroll, and it would just roll forward like like a big pillow or something, and it was very hard on your eyes and your nose and your throat. And when we would uh, be at home, and on the usually the rolls would come in the afternoons, and after a dry spell, and they didn't come every week, but just however the earth was rotating or something. I don't understand that part, but uh, it would come in and roll closer, and then you just see it coming towards you, and it would, if the sun was low, it would just cover the sun up completely, and it was just get black, and it just rolled across the country there, and it would be several miles long, this roll of dirt, and um, I don't know how many years, maybe 4 or 5 years, it was pretty bad. I I remember in about 1930, I guess, there was one of the big. We could see it coming from the from the southwest. So my dad got all of us kiddos and mom and went to the cellar, which is a dugout outside, and it had um, dirt roof, and it's just big enough for us kids to get in there and sit on the way they cut the cellar out. They left a bench on each side, and there were 7 of us kids, and then mom and dad, and occasionally grandma or somebody else would be here. But we just all went down there, and my dad would pull the door down on it and tie it around the cross tie down inside so that the wind wouldn't blow it open. And then we just, every once in a while, he would peek a little bit and see how it was going, and if it was kind of blowing over, he would start opening the door up, and and then we just get on out, and it usually just blow on over, and go on over to the northeast, and hit the people over there, and it was, you just couldn't get it out of your nose and your hair, and it was just really nauseating.
So, how old were you when the first Dust Bowl storm hit?
Well, I was probably 4 or 5, but we had them for several years. We had them after I had started to school, and I started to school when I was 6, so I know a couple of times we got caught walking home from school. These storms, you knew, always happened in the afternoon. So we just get out of school at 4 o'clock, and then we had to walk 2.5 miles to get home. So we'd cover our faces with our handkerchiefs or our gloves or pull our caps down over our heads and just go home. And we had to go just crossways from the way it usually was. So it wasn't as bad as if we had to go into it. But and that, so many times they did happen in the early afternoon, like 3 or something like that. And let's see, I don't know what to, I'll tell you about how we went to bed. When the storms were there, that Mom would wet bed sheets and hang them over the windows to try to catch most of the dirt from coming in the house, and we would take them down and dip them in the water, and then roll them up and hang them back up around wherever we were going to sleep, and then lots of times we'd had individual things like, well, a tea towel, not very heavy, but you'd wet it and just lay it over your head, cover your whole head up to go to sleep, because otherwise you'd breathe that and you would start sneezing and your eyes would be all watery and everything. So if the storms went on into the evenings, or if they weren't big enough to send us in hiding, we would do that. And when we would walk home from school, we had to wear long cotton stockings to school, and they come up above our knee, and they had a garter to hold our stockings up. And we always just hated those stockings. And so when Mom would get us ready to go to school, we had to wear our stockings. This is mostly just Bess and I, because the others were all boys. And when we would get to school, we'd roll our stockings down to our ankles, so we didn't feel that old stuff. So, but we'd forget to roll them back up coming home, and we had to walk. It was 2.5 miles, and most of the time we had to walk. And so that if the dust was rolling like that, it would come rolling along the ground, and it would make little spocks on your legs where a little rock had hit. And then when we'd get close to home, we would roll our stockings back up. And then Mama would roll our stockings. She said, "You didn't wear your stockings up today. You got pimples in your feet."
She could tell.
So what was affected by the Dust Bowl?
The what?
What was affected by the Dust Bowl?
Ask it a different way.
Like the farming or...
Okay, was there any animals or was anything affected?
Oh, animals. Well, yeah. We used horses around the farm for we didn't have tractors then, so we used the farm plows were pulled by horses, and they had to eat from the ground, and they ate up until their teeth wore off, and they were starving to death because they couldn't. That's the only way they could eat, and the dirt was up so bad, and always right in their noses, because their noses were right here, and the dirt and little rocks and everything. So, they decided they had to kill 2 of the, we called them mares. Mules, and my dad said that he had to get rid of them. So they got in touch with the Amarillo Zoo, and the zoo would take animals like that to feed to their animals, to the wild animals. But my dad told them they couldn't, they were just would come out and pick them up. And my dad said, well, you're not going to pick them up with the kids there. You've got to take them away from the farm before you kill them. So you have to get a trailer or something. You can't just walk off with them, because he wasn't going to let us see them being killed for that reason. Lots of animals starved. Even the prairie animals would, because it was so bad during those days.
So who was the president during that time?
Franklin Roosevelt, I think, but I'm not sure whether who was president before. Hoover?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think President Roosevelt probably was the president at that time. My memory's it's not as long as the president, because I believe it was about that time, like 32 to 35, 36. Yeah.
So did he try to do anything to prevent the storms, or did he really help out?
Well, it was a natural thing, actually. We had no rain, and so everything died, the trees and bushes and everything. So there wasn't much they could do. But when we did start getting a little more movement back in the rains and stuff, they did work programs to help the farmers with a little irrigation and things like that, and conservation. So I was not much. I was more of just a daddy's little girl, not a farmer.
So during the Dust Bowl, were you able to play outside?
Well, you could, but when it was bad like that, you didn't want to. You couldn't breathe that, and you just wanted to go somewhere and hide and cover your head. You know, we only had outside, and inside we didn't have any buildings. Well, we had a few barns that would help a little bit for the animals, and they did get in the barns, and it would help them some in breathing, and they fed them.
So during the Dust Bowl,
Yeah.
before and after, was there anything that you had to change with the food or the drinks that you would have?
Oh, well, you remember that was a long time ago, so we didn't have anything but milk and water. We didn't have any Cokes or anything like that, and we didn't buy orange juice. We had oranges once in a while, but we didn't bother to squeeze them, because we were all ready to eat the orange without just eat the peeling and all, because we didn't have any bottled drinks. But everybody that worked out in it always carried their own jugs of water, and would quite often have somebody stop by your house and ask if they could fill their barrels or fill their tanks with well water. We always had a good well, so most of the time we were able to have a little garden with the well water, but there never was enough rainwater to grow anything, maybe trees.
So, was some of your food supplies unavailable at the time?
That too was simple. We did go to the grocery store once every 2 weeks or something like that, and bought just the things that you couldn't make, like coffee and sugar and things like that. We usually took our wheat into the elevator and had it ground for our flour. So we very seldom had white flour. We would have brown flour with grain in it, with coarser than powdered flour. If they wanted powdered flour, they had to get it at the grocery store. And there wasn't many things that you bought at the grocery store. Mom worked lots in the gardens to prepare food in jars for the winter time, and other times when she didn't want to get outside and pick the garden.
So, how many times did a dust storm happen?
I really don't know, but maybe on the average of just 3 or so a year for those 5 or 6 years that were so bad. I'm not sure. It seemed awful. It seemed like it did it a lot because it was so dreadful from what we usually did. So, you know, I just couldn't say how many. We always thought it was funny because lots of times it would happen on Sunday afternoon, and people would make remarks about, did you go to church? Was that the reason we had the storm? They weren't as up to date as you guys are now.
So, is there any closing statements that you would want to make about the Dust Bowl?
About the Dust Bowl.
What was that story you were saying earlier? I only heard a part of it. One about,
Walking home and Fred.
yeah. The one with Fred walking home.
Oh yeah, we all walked home from school. There were 6 of us in Bushland School at the same time. And Leola was the oldest one, and she always took our lunch in a bucket for our lunch. And then she directed us walking home. We were to mind her. We had to come the same way all the time. And we went down the first section, then we could cut across and cross the fields if it was a neighbor that didn't mind the kids doing that, and they didn't. They were always good about it. But once in a while, in the latter part, Daddy would pick us up, and the boys quite often would ride ponies to school, and then ride home, and maybe we would be lucky for one of our brothers to pick us up and set us on the front of the horse and ride with him, you know. But they did.
You were talking about running ahead of the dust storm, trying to get home.
Yeah, we'd do that.
Uh-huh.
But and